Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September meeting of Central Park United Neighbors. Central Park United Neighbors, or CPUN, is the registered neighborhood organization for the Central Park community in Denver and Aurora. Mark, you can skip to the next slide if you like. We are here to facilitate dialogue and create awareness around opportunities to engage on topics of importance to the community. We help people find their way into a process so that resident questions, concerns, and ideas for a better community can be addressed in a constructive and inclusive way. We promote public service, civil civic discourse, and collective efficacy. At monthly meetings like this one, and through the work of our 6 working committees, CPUN facilitates the discussion of key issues with neighbors, engages in proactive problem avoidance, and amicable problem solving. CPUN is committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for all members of our community. We are an all-volunteer board of your neighbors and a registered 501c3. Tonight's meeting will have its usual 2 parts. The first half being our outreach meeting, which will follow our normal cadence. Our special guests tonight, however, are Lana Dalton and Sabrina Alley from the city's Department of Housing Stability. They are here to talk about what their department does, current initiatives and recent successes, and ways for community members, I should say, to engage, as well as answer any questions, of course, that attendees this evening have. Our board hour, which will follow, will include our regular committee reports. We'll take a look at our upcoming calendar for guest speaker. There's several follow-up items that we have in the queue, everything ranging from a school safety forum effort that we've been working on to a crime presentation from last month and the subsequent articles that have appeared in the front porch, and as well as some fundraising activities. We'll have an update on our community survey and then conclude with a treasurer's report and a look at hopefully finalizing our budget for the remainder of the board year. I mentioned the survey. It is out now. We are doing another annual community survey. I think this one's a little bit different than the one that we did last year, in that we've tried to shorten it up a little bit more in response to community feedback, but also to make our questions much more targeted towards providing us with the information our board needs to take direct and specific action in the form of events, programming, and other opportunities to engage. So we do encourage you to complete that survey. It's extremely helpful information for us, but also for other community stakeholders as we share that survey data with the MCA and others. So Mark, if you don't mind putting the link to the survey in the chat, people can collect it there, and also look out for it in our regular community emails. I should add, it is open through the end of the month. So you've got a couple weeks left, but not too much longer. So do please complete that survey. All right, we'll next move on to CPUN committee updates. We've got a little bit of a technical glitch here where I'm at the MCA with Carol and Danny here. But if you're having trouble hearing anyone or need anyone to speak up, please just raise your hand and we'll make sure that we were able to communicate effectively. So with that said, do any of our committees have any updates for the community? This portion is specifically for opportunities to participate in programming or to otherwise engage that take place in the next month or so. Carol does.
As co-chair of Safe Streets Committee, we are getting an increasing number of residents who contact us about accidents and egregious driving, and we are taking all that in. We respond pretty promptly, and we appreciate very much that people are beginning to reach out and report, because data is everything. I say this all the time, but if you don't report it, it didn't happen, in terms of the various entities that deal with things like this, like Dottie and like the Denver Police Department. So please continue to do that. And let me see. Oh, and with the Education Committee, very quickly, Our DPS director, Michelle Quattlebaum, initiated an idea for an advisory council for our school district. And she has a gentleman, Clarence Burton Jr. is his name. He is CEO of Denver Families for Public Schools. And they are having an initial meeting in October 15th, to form an advisory council. And that's going to be, they're going to ask families to get involved and educators to get involved. So that's as much information as I have now. When we have a time and a location, we'll make sure that we get that to you. And we're also looking forward, the education committee is looking very much forward to the survey because there were a number of education related questions about that. And finally, with education, Brian Weber with the Foundation for Sustainable Urban Communities, they have constructed a website that will act in support of Central Park schools. And so there'll be more information about that Brian will share with us. And we're very excited about that happening for our students and our school staff.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any other committees that would like to provide an update?
Hi, this is Liz from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Just wanted to let everyone know that our monthly committee meeting is going to be in person next week. We'll be at the Prairie Meadows Park, the covered picnic tables at 51st and Verbena. And because of when sunset is this time of year, we'll be meeting from 5:30 to 7 o'clock instead of from 6 to 7 o'clock. So just wanted to invite folks. I'll share the information in the chat and we'll also include it in our email to our email list.
Thank you, Liz. Anybody else? If not, we will move on to our community updates with our various community partners, and we will start, as we always do, with Denver Police Department. I see Officer Ferenz. Is Lieutenant Hines here this evening? Officer Ferenz. Oh, sorry.
I had myself on mute. I apologize.
Oh, no, that's all right. Yeah, go ahead.
So Lieutenant Hines is actually on vacation for the next couple weeks. So it's just me. I don't really have any updates. I know last meeting was more of an in-depth, extensive meeting. Don't really have anything to add. The only thing that I announced this morning in the Central Park Business meeting was our Halloween event that we're doing this year. It's October 29th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at Lincoln Tech. It's going to be very similar to last year. If anybody attended, it's free for the community. We do a really, really big Halloween event, lots of candy. We have a haunted house. We're going to have food. So I will be sending out a flyer with all that information really soon. So look for that and save the date. And you guys are more than welcome to stop by and bring your families and kiddos. But that is all I have, unless anybody has any questions. I'll stick around in case anybody has any questions.
Sorry, I've been on mute. Sorry. Thank you, Officer Friends. I appreciate the update. Thank you. I don't see anyone from Councilman Herndon's office, so we'll move on. John Flanagan from the library. I do see you there.
Just Amanda from the council office is on, actually.
Oh, did she? Okay, did she just?
Thanks, Liz. I've been here. You probably just didn't recognize it because I changed my last name, so it probably looks a little bit different.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Amanda. Please, yeah, go ahead.
That's okay, no worries, and thank you, Liz. I appreciate it. Nothing too big on our end. Just wanted to mention that we are headed into budget season for the city. So the mayor proposes a budget, and then council can approve it or amend it. And as part of that, we'll have lots and lots of budget hearings. So those start on Friday and they'll be packed all through next week. And those are always accessible to members of the public. So you can watch online on Channel 8, denvergov.org, and they'll also be recorded. So if you can't watch them in real time, you can certainly go back and watch them, you know, pour yourself a big bowl of popcorn. They're usually interesting, actually. And if you have any questions about budget stuff or concerns, or you just want to let us know like, hey, we think this is great, we have concerns about this number, please reach out and let us know. It's part of what we're here for, and we would love to hear from you all. And I'll stick around as well. So if you have any questions for me, I'll be here.
Thanks, Amanda. Any questions for Amanda? All right, now we'll go on to John at the library. How are you, John?
Okay. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I'm trying to get my video going. There we go. Maybe. Oh, there we go. All right. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Just a couple quick updates from the Sam Gary Branch Library. One of the things I wanted to talk about is we are now offering on Mondays between 1:30 and 3:30. We have someone at the library, we call them peer navigators. So these are people, they're not social workers, they're people who have often experienced homelessness, different things like that, that are now working with the library to help people out who need assistance connecting to resources in the community. So every Monday from 1:30 to 3:30, we have someone in our lobby, and then we have a private room available if somebody wants more privacy. But this is to help people connect with resources for housing, food assistance, resources, all sorts of things. So it kind of is a pretty wide thing. So we're pretty excited about that. We're trying to get the word out. So we want people to know about that. If people need assistance, it should be every Monday at 1:30 to 3:30. And then my other thing I was just going to mention is that our makerspace, our Idea Lab, we're starting to do some programming in there, which we hadn't done since it's been open about a year, and we had a lot of restrictions due to COVID, but we've got a couple awesome people working in there who are really excited to teach people things. So I'm going to share a link to our calendar, our online calendar, which features a lot of this, but every fourth Saturday of the month, they're going to open the Idea Lab early for people to have a sensory friendly environment. So we're going to limit it to 10 people in the makerspace, and we are going to not allow the use of some of the tools that make a lot of noise, power tools and our laser cutter and that sort of thing. So we're excited about that. And then there's going to be some various programs. We've got a mask making program and also a pumpkin decorating program in October. So I will share a link to our online calendar that features all of this stuff that I'm talking about. And yeah, unless anybody has any questions, that's all I've got this month.
Sorry, John, Carol has a question for you.
How are you getting the word out about this Monday afternoon resource that you're offering, which I think is wonderful?
Well, so excuse me, we have newsletters that people can sign up for on our website, and so we do a lot of marketing and communication that way. We do have a marketing department downtown that does do some mailing. We don't really have the budget to do a lot of print advertising or that sort of thing, and then advertising it on our website. And yeah, I guess if anyone has any ideas for other ways to get the word out in the community, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, that's most of our typical ways that we market our other resources and programs.
Well, John, one thing you can always do is send that information to us and to me, and we can distribute it through our social media channels and stuff like that where it's applicable.
Okay, great.
I see Sandra's raised her hand as well.
Yes, thank you. I think the public library is one of the best things that the United States has to offer. I have loved it since I was a kid. I did not know about the newsletter that you have, but I'm definitely going to sign up for that. But one of the things that I was thinking of, I was wondering actually if you had signs on the doors of the library or somewhere in the library so that people who happen to go into the library will notice that there's this Monday offering that's available too. And also one thing I was thinking of for us CPUN board members, if Gina's not on the call right now, that we should let Gina know about this, because Gina would be a way to spread the word about that as well.
And I'll also include my my direct email in the chat as well. So if there's anyone directly that wants to get in touch with me as well. But yes, we certainly have signs up in the library. And part of it is we just started it, so it's kind of getting the word out. And they're also I should have mentioned, the Central Library has a couple social workers who are really connected in with a lot of local organizations. So they are also spreading the word that way, and they are represented throughout the city at different libraries all around, so that different days of the week people are available, so that people don't have to travel too far as well.
All right, any other questions for John? I just want to quickly echo Sandra's sentiment, because I'll do it anytime I get the chance, that in my time on CPUN, there's not been a better partner as far as organizing and hosting events and creating spaces to get together than the public library and the Sam Gary branch specifically. I've always been very grateful for the service that you provide and the partnership you've offered us. So thank you, John.
Thank you.
We have NETC next. I don't see Eric, but I also didn't see Amanda. So maybe Eric's here too. Is Eric here this evening? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so we'll move on from NETC this month. And I think that just leaves us with the MCA. Diane, do you want to provide an update?
Sure, happy to. And thanks. John just wanted to say, the MCA also has an e-blast that we send out on Wednesdays, and you all usually send us over the information you have. But if you have a specific flyer for this program, send it over our way. And
yeah, thank you. I don't think we've actually shared that information. It's kind of brand new, so we will include that on our next one.
Okay, sure. Great. Yeah, you all do usually send that over to us. So yes, thank you. All right, just, as we know, pools closed yesterday, or actually, yeah, yesterday was the first day they were closed after we had an extended season. And we are just kind of winding summer activities down. Our final concert was Saturday. We have our final farmers market and pumpkin patch scheduled for October 9th on the South Green. And like Amanda said, the MCA is also in budget season, and we are really looking at the effects of that inflation has had, and the minimum wage increase had on our summer programming. So we'll be looking at things such as the price of utilities, chemicals, but especially the wages, and increasing those budget lines for next year. But all in all, it was a good summer, and we're just moving forward, getting excited for what the fall has to bring. We have our upcoming annual members meeting, which will be in November, and I'll give you more information on that in October.
Diane, congratulations on a full summer slate of pool days and events. It was great to be a part of that as a resident, and you're always good about letting CPUN carve out a little real estate at those as well. So thank you for that.
Anytime. And I don't know if we've received your link for the survey that we could put in the e-blast tomorrow, but we'd be happy to,
thank you.
Throw it in there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll make sure to send. Should I just send that to you?
Yeah, just shoot it over.
I just put it in the chat again, so you can.
I'll copy that and.
Thank you. Thank you, and my apologies. I should have.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, I should have sent that to you guys last week. My apologies.
Okay.
Diane, one quick question for you. You mentioned the budget.
Yes.
What kind of visibility do residents have on that in terms of, are there ways for them to follow along with the progress? Where do they go to look for what the budget will be? Are there ways to engage that they should be aware of?
Typically, it will be the budget will be created, kind of forecasting what we expect for next year versus what we saw this year. And then it will be presented at the annual members meeting. It will be online on our website at mca80238.com. So you can receive it and look at it then once it's ready to go. We present it to the delegates, and it's actually the delegates that will vote on it to accept it or not accept it. But at the annual members meeting is when we go through it line by line and discuss it and talk about it.
Great.
But it'll be online prior to that.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Does anyone
you
else
bet.
have any other questions for Diane or the MCA?
Thanks.
All this is unprecedented. We are ahead of schedule going into the.
Woohoo!
I even have enough time to say that without risking going over. So over the course of 2022, CPUN has heard from a lot of residents about concerns around the issue of people experiencing homelessness. And so we wanted to make this a point of emphasis in our new board year. And we're starting that in addition to some questions in the survey with our special guest for the evening, Lana Dalton, who is the Director of Unsheltered Homelessness Response, and Sabrina Alley, who's the Communications and Engagement Director for the City and County of Denver's Department of Housing Stability. As I said at the top, they are here to talk about what their department does, current initiatives that they have underway, and some recent successes to sort of make that work a bit more concrete, and then ways for the community to engage as well. And we're hopeful that there will be some time at the end for some questions. So I just want to thank Lana and Sabrina for taking time out of their evening to join us. It's much appreciated, and I can tell you after conversations with Sabrina directly that they are very enthusiastic about their work and look forward to collaborating with us in the future. So with that, I will turn it over. I'll stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours if you have any slides.
Thanks, Jeff. I was just going to ask if it was okay for me to share my screen before I just cut you off there. So, okay, let me get this pulled up here. I'm Sabrina Alley. As Jeff said, I'm the Director of Communications and Community Engagement for the Department of Housing Stability, and Lana is here as well. So we're really excited to present to you today. I'm going to try to just kind of walk through some kind of basics on our side first, and then, oops, sorry. Lana's going to go through more of the detail of what her team does, and then we can open it up for questions as well. So hopefully that's all very helpful. I need to get my meeting controls right. Sorry, hang on. Apologies for the delay. Well, I'm just going to cruise through then. Let's see if it'll let me. So just wanted to start out first with a little background on HOST. The Department of Housing Stability, we call HOST as our acronym. Mayor Hancock actually formed this new department a little over 2 years ago. The executive order was signed October 23rd of 2019. And the idea behind this was that we had a lot of different agencies that were working in the areas of affordable housing and housing stability and homelessness resolution. And all of those teams were in different departments, and they, as you can imagine, don't necessarily coordinate as easily when they're all over the city in different departments with different direction and different budgets and all of those things. And so Mayor Hancock really wanted to bring all of the agencies working in these areas together. And so that's what we did. We brought housing and homelessness together so that we can really work in a coordinated way to invest our resources and create policies and partner with all of the various neighborhood organizations and contractors and providers that we have to provide housing stability and really resolve episodes of homelessness in our community, as well as creating housing opportunities. Because as we'll talk about, we believe that housing is the ultimate answer to homelessness. So just a little bit about who we serve. In 2021, which are the most complete numbers we have for a full year, we served over 14,000 people in our shelter system. We met with 2,200 people just from our department and our contracted partners through outreach. We provided 2,300 people with rehousing supports, which means connecting them to housing after an episode of homelessness. And we served another 9,500 plus people in stability programs. So that's things like rent and utility assistance, eviction assistance to keep people in their homes so they don't become homeless. We also created or preserved 1,100 affordable units in our community in just that 1 year. The people we serve are disproportionately Black, Indigenous, and people of color, disproportionately female, over the age of 55, and have disabling conditions. And that is why we really work as a department to focus our efforts under an overarching umbrella of equity. We know that the issues that lead to homelessness and housing instability are often disproportionately affecting those groups. And so we're really working to create equity where we can and bringing that lens to everything we do. Our work is trauma informed. We know that these experiences are really traumatic for the people that we're serving. And so we have an emphasis on that in everything we do. We're also very data driven, and we're focused on looking at what actually works and replicating that wherever we can. We also try to be innovative, but we really like our innovations to be based in data and other research that we've seen work elsewhere. And we're very person-centered. So you'll hear us refer to people experiencing homelessness rather than homeless people, because we really want the person to come first and the condition that they're experiencing to come second. And so that's why you'll hear that terminology used a lot in this space. We have 3 different pillars in our department. These are our divisions, if you will, but they really are the way that we structure our work. So we have our housing stability pillar, which again is all about how do we keep people in their homes. So making sure people have rent and utility assistance, that they can access all kinds of supports to keep them in their houses so they don't become displaced or homeless. We have our homeless resolution pillar, which is where Lana is in our organization and what we'll talk about mostly tonight. And that's really about how do we resolve episodes of homelessness for people once they are in that situation. We have our housing opportunity pillar, which is all about how do we create more housing affordability in our city, both in rental and ownership opportunities. Includes things like down payment assistance programs, but also working with developers and investing some of our funds into affordable housing that has covenants on it for the long term. So good things happening in there too. And then our operations team, which I'm part of, we are the support for all of those other teams in terms of contracts, communications, all that kind of budget, all that kind of good stuff. So that's kind of our department in a nutshell. So wanted to talk to you mostly tonight about the issue of homelessness, because Jeff kind of filled us in on some of the conversations you all have had about that, and wanted to start with just a little primer on the fact that housing cost burden in Denver is a pretty serious thing. We have 1 in 3 of our Denver households that are housing cost burdened. And what that means is that they're paying more than 1/3 of their income toward their housing alone. And when people have that much of their income going toward their housing cost, it means that they have less flexibility for things happening in their lives, such as, an unexpected health or medical bill, or the loss of a job. Those kinds of things can throw people into a real crisis very suddenly when that much of their income is being spent. And we also have 1 in 5 Denver households that's actually experiencing severe housing cost burden, where more than half of their income is going toward housing costs alone. And that's because we know rents and mortgages are increasing dramatically throughout the Denver metro area, and our incomes are just not keeping up. All of that leads us to more discussion of how people become homeless and what causes homelessness. And we really just want to reinforce that homelessness is really a symptom of a lot of other things that are happening in our systems and our society overall. Again, we have stagnant incomes, we have rising housing costs. Really, the lack of affordable housing, we believe, is the primary driver of homelessness. Some people, though, are having unique situations like, escaping violence is one of the reasons that people become homeless. Health problems, which again contribute to people's incomes and their inability to afford housing. We also see the impact of racial disparities on people's ability to find and keep housing. So we really believe as a department that housing that is affordable, safe, and healthy provides people with a stable platform that they can address all of the issues that may have contributed to them experiencing an episode of homelessness. And that's kind of what you'll hear referred to as the housing first approach, right? So housing first is about, we believe that no matter what contributed to you becoming homeless, that you can best address that when you have the stability of a home. So we do hear a lot, and we understand that, there are concerns with people having substance use issues, mental health issues, all kinds of other things. And that may be the case, but it's really hard to resolve those issues when you're living perhaps on the streets unsheltered, or even in a shelter. Until you have the stability of housing, it can be very, very difficult to address many of those situations, even with things as simple as not having an ID that you can, use to check into your mental health provider, right? So those kinds of things are the stability that our team really looks to providing, because we believe in this housing first philosophy. And I think from there, Lana, were you going to do this one, or am I? I lost track of what slide I'm on.
You are.
Okay, so we did also just want to underscore for you that there is a count that is done every year by the Metro Denver Homelessness Initiative. They are kind of the federally designated partner that does all of our homelessness kind of data keeping for the entire region. And MDHI does a count every year, and they verify that count. And we work with them in the 7-county metro area to help do that count. And so we did a new one this year, and I apologize, I didn't update the numbers just before this, but it was, roughly 4,000 people that we have experiencing homelessness on any given night in the year. As you can imagine, that is substantially more when you look at how many people we serve throughout the course of a year. But on any given night, there are 4,000 people who are without a place to call home. And one of the things that we think is really important is that people understand that while we definitely have seen an increase in the number of people who are living unsheltered on our streets, and we're all seeing that, we are serving more people experiencing homelessness than you see. We are serving 3 times as many people in our shelter system as we're seeing unsheltered. And so we find that to be a real success with our shelter system, and a lot of the transformations we've made to make it 24-hour accessible, to provide people with meals, assigned beds, locking storage, those kinds of things. But we also know that that shelter system doesn't always meet the needs of everyone. And so Lana will talk a little bit more about that, but we do think it's important to know that the scope of what you see just on the streets day to day is not the full scope of the problem, and that many of those people you just don't see because they're in the shelter system being served by our partners. With that, I'll turn it over to Lana.
Thanks. So yeah, like Sabrina was saying, in the recent years, due to COVID, we've kind of transformed the shelter system with more of a rehousing focus. So like she said, this offers a 24/7 or kind of like a residential facility for individuals experiencing homelessness. So that means that people can come inside and stay inside when they check into a shelter facility. Also, shelter isn't for everyone. And so we had to look at other alternatives that may be appealing to folks, particularly that are experiencing unsheltered homelessness on the street. Some of those things look like safe outdoor spaces, tiny homes. Also, we have a large amount of individuals living out of vehicles and RVs. And so we are looking at a safe parking program, which is very similar to the safe outdoor spaces, but it allows individuals who are living in their vehicles to park their cars safely overnight in different parking lots throughout Denver. I also want to mention too, we, as a result of COVID, there was a non-congregate sheltering. So that means hotels or motel rooms that were utilized throughout as well. And there were 786 rooms that were brought forth due to the COVID efforts. Sorry, you want to go to the next slide?
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Difficulties.
Also, the voters of Denver have passed the ballot measure 2B, which created a homelessness resolution fund for the city. And so we just wanted to share with you some of the things that that fund is already funding. So those tiny home villages that I just had mentioned are being funded through this fund. The 24/7 shelter operations, we were able to do that because of this ballot measure. Also some additional rapid rehousing and supportive housing dollars. The difference kind of between rapid rehousing and supportive housing is those wraparound services for individuals that may be experiencing a disability, mental health, substance misuse issue, and need additional support in order to maintain their housing. Whereas rapid rehousing dollars are those very quick ability for individuals to get in and then sustain on their own. We are very grateful to the voters of Denver for passing this ballot initiative because it allowed us to do some new and innovative things that had never been done before. And I also will mention in regards to like the tiny home villages, which have been really successful, a really successful rehousing program for victims of domestic violence because they're smaller, it's a community, it allows for some anonymity in that community. And so just to really want to highlight that one. The U.S. Department of Treasury awarded up to about $6.3 million to the City County of Denver to fund a new Denver Housing to Health Pay for Success project. This leverages the infrastructure and partnership from the social impact bond that was done in the City and County of Denver. And so this provides permanent supportive housing, so those wraparound services like I just talked about, to a new cohort of 125 individuals who've experienced homelessness, have a criminal justice record, they're at high risk for going to the emergency room or having additional healthcare costs that are typically paid by Medicaid. So what this program does is it reduces that impact on the overall systems that these individuals touch and provides them with housing and supportive services to keep them out of those specific systems and provide them with the necessary different resources and things that are needed for them to get into and stay and remain in housing. Denver was the second entity to be rewarded these. This is called a CIPRA project or CIPRA funds. It's the Social Impact Partnerships Social Impact Partnerships to Pay for Results Act. It's a mouthful. This Housing to Health project will serve those folks who are cycling in and out of those public systems. They have to be 18 years or older, have at least 8 arrests. 3 of those have to be related to homelessness, so like a trespass or a misdemeanor at some level, over 3 years in Denver County courts, have to be high risk and for avoidable high cost health services paid through Medicaid. So things like going to the emergency room on a regular basis because there's not another option or they don't understand how to navigate those services at an outpatient level. So several partners are taking part in this. You can see some of them on this slide here. So Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, Mental Health Center of Denver, also now known as WellPower, the Urban Institute, and CSH. So the overall impact of this program is really to reduce the federal and local costs of this specific population on the health and justice system, to really help us one, make sure that these individuals get the services that they need, and to help reduce those costs overall. What we did find through the last project is that we spend about $33,400 annually per person that have these high cost touch points throughout the system. And this specific type of program reduces those expenses by about $11,100 per person.
And if I may interject, I think the other thing that we really learned from the original program was that housing first works, right? The philosophy we were just talking about, when you give people housing and give them that stability, provide them with those wraparound services, that it really, they do stay housed. It was something like, I think 78%, I don't know if it says in our notes, but stayed housed over the course of like 3 years. So it definitely works when we provide these services, and it reduces cost to our system.
Awesome. So some affordable housing development. So for Denver to be an inclusive city, it's important for everyone to have housing that fits within their budget. So as Sabrina had mentioned earlier, there are many folks within our city that are paying a third or more of their income towards rent or a mortgage. And so it's really important that we have affordable housing available for those individuals. Right now, we have a pipeline of about 513 homes that are in planning. And since the mayor came into office, we've had 8,759 affordable homes created, which is a substantial dent into what the need is. However, it doesn't we're not quite there yet. We're always continuing to look for and create or preserve affordable homes in Denver. Let's see. Thanks. Some of my stuff got cut off. And then also we always just like to mention the resident resources. Host has a ton of resources available. You can go to denvergov.org/housing. We like to mention that this individual who volunteered to be part of the slideshow, Monica Gallegos from Westward. She was a single mother. She had an emergency surgery, which ended up having her miss 2 months of work. And one of our programs covered her for just about $1,165 to prevent her from eviction. So she could in turn, after those 2 months, go back to work as a dental assistant and not lose her housing. And so it's just really important, to note that, again, on that whole spectrum that we were talking about and all of the different pillars, that there's, everything from ensuring people have housing stability and resources for that, all the way to individuals that are experiencing homelessness currently, that we have resources and programs and things for that as well. And then we also get a lot of the questions about well, how can I help? And so some of the things that Host charges you all with would be to help change the conversation. One of those things would be to, our department provides a lot of opportunities to serve on boards. There's lots of nonprofits and other organizations who are looking for folks to have opportunities to serve on their boards. And so being part of those can educate community members and to provide awareness across the board for folks and for everybody on the call. We also like to make sure that we note that, when affordable housing units are going up, or when neighbors are moving into your community that may have experienced homelessness, that, folks are welcomed into that community. We've had a lot of conversations in regards to having some of these shelter alternatives, is what we call them, or safe outdoor spaces, safe parking, things of that nature. But they do work, and if we can welcome those types of spaces into different communities in order to provide these alternatives, it's really helpful to move individuals maybe from an unsheltered situation into a permanent housing situation. Excuse me, if you own a business, or if you have anybody that you're in need of specific day kind of work, we do contract with Denver Day Works. It's a program that's ran by Bayad Enterprises, and what that does is it helps individuals that are experiencing instability in that moment get day labor and work on different, through different contracts that the city has, or through different entities that you can hire them for. And they've done everything from moving to cleaning sidewalks to all kinds of different things, and are available for hire for that. And then also we hold a Housing Stability Strategic Advisors public meeting on a monthly basis. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sabrina.
It's monthly. They skip July and December, but
perfect. And that's a great opportunity to, one, hear what's happening in Host, and two, also provide feedback to us directly and that specific board. And so always great to hear from folks, and you're more than welcome to join that at any time. And we also have a newsletter that goes out on a regular basis, and you can sign up for that on denvergov.org/housing.
And if I can plug one thing that's coming up, we expect to be releasing next week both our 2021 annual report that shows that we exceeded the goals of our former Housing and Inclusive Denver, which was our former 5-year plan. in just 4 years, we exceeded those goals. And then also we're going to be putting out our 2023 action plan. So looking forward, how we plan to, what our priorities are for the year and how we plan to spend the funds that are anticipated in the budget for next year in order to accomplish the goals that we have in our current 5-year strategic plan, which can also be found on our website. But that will be out next week. And we do have a community survey that's connected to that. So I'll make sure I get that information to Jeff to share with the rest of you, because we would love to get your feedback on it. And then I think with that, we just wanted to answer any questions that you all might have.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Sabrina and Lana. I really appreciate it. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes for questions. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Hi, this is Shalise. I have 2 questions.
Hi, Shalise, go ahead.
Okay, so my first question is, you mentioned that you guys exceeded your goals within 4 years of your 5-year plan. When your goals were set, I'm assuming 5 to 6 years ago, did you guys account for the increase in population?
That's a really great question. I actually wasn't with the department then, so I don't know that. I would have to go back and look at that. But I do believe that in all of our strategic planning, we do have, we set our targets with that in mind. So we work with the planning department on what that's supposed to look like, but I don't know how accurate that was or anything. So that's something I could definitely follow up with you on. If you want to reach out to me, I'll put my email in the chat.
Awesome. Okay, and then my, I guess my second question is a 2-part question. Is your agency responsible for partnering with the Colorado Coalition of Homeless?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We do contract with them.
So then the second part of my question is, it was the contract with the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless that ended the lease with the hotel because of staffing needs. What did you guys do to help those people find housing? And why didn't you actually just help them staff the hotel instead of putting all those people on the streets?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that if that's okay, Lana.
Yeah.
So the Quality Inn Hotel that's located off of roughly Spear and Zunai is a protective action shelter. And so what that is it's an emergency shelter that we ramped up during the pandemic to help people who had health conditions that made them particularly vulnerable to COVID, not have to stay in congregate shelter. And this was especially true before we had vaccines and really knew how spreading was going on. Congregate shelters, you have sometimes hundreds of people in a single room. And so those folks were had to go through some different qualification processes. And we had hundreds of people that we've had in our protective action program over the past couple of years. And we're really, really proud to be able to say that, the goal of that program was to keep people safe. And we did not have anyone who was at risk die from COVID in those programs. We've also rehoused over 450 people from the protective action program. So because of their being in that program, we were able to get them back to housing. Quality Inn is one of 3 remaining protective action shelters. We actually already closed 2 previously successfully. And this particular, facility is run by Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. We do work with other partners at other locations. We have all known that these emergency shelters would come to an end when the federal government decides to stop the public health order that funds these programs, because they are funded through federal dollars. And so the current round of funding goes through December. We do have contracts with those 3 different facilities through December, including Quality Inn and Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, but it was not clear whether the federal government, and we still do not have confirmation that will be continued. So what we did was we worked with our partners, and they hold the lease on that particular hotel. Our other 2 facilities, the city owns the lease on, or holds the lease on through December for the time being. This particular one they hold, and it was only through the end of September. We talked to our partners about whether or not they would be willing to extend that lease longer, and they didn't have the staffing to do that. We talked with our other partners about whether or not they could staff up to do that and operate that facility, and it was just not a possibility to continue it. And the decision was made that because we will eventually have to phase these out, that it would be better not to close all 3 facilities at the same time in the middle of winter in December. And so we worked with Colorado Coalition for the Homeless on preparing residents to start making those transitions out of that facility. They're always working, our case managers at these facilities are always working with people to make sure that they can be rehoused as soon as possible. And so it's not like they were waiting for the closure to start trying to rehouse people. People were given 30 days advance notice. And we're very happy to say that we had over 70% of the guests at that facility go to a housing outcome. In some cases that may have included another protective action facility if we had the space available for them. And those rooms were prioritized for guests with the most vulnerable health conditions. But 70% did go to housing outcomes. The other 30% were all offered beds in our shelter system. We understand that not everybody wanted to pursue that option, but my understanding is that less than 11% of those guests were discharged to an unknown source. The others all went to shelter and took us up on that opportunity. So, you know, while there were people who I'm certain did not want to go to a congregate facility, those beds were available and reserved for them, along with transportation for them and their belongings.
Okay, sorry about your time, Jeff, but I do have one more question. You stated that the money used to pay for these facilities was the pandemic COVID relief money that came from the federal government. But us living in Colorado and winter being right around the corner, does the city have a bucket of money set to the side to maybe recontract with some of these facilities? And since they didn't own the contract at one of the facilities, what are they going to do different next time?
So we do have in this year's budget, we're pretty excited about the fact that the mayor has proposed funding for 2 hotels that would be for non-congregate shelter. That wouldn't necessarily be to continue the protective action program per se, because that will come to an end when the federal health emergency comes to an end. But we learned from COVID that these non-congregate facilities and alternatives to shelter are very important, and that we have a lot of people who just can't go to shelter for a number of reasons, health being one of them. You know, couples, people who have pets, those types of things are better served in other conditions. And so we really are trying to expand our offering of those more residential like facilities that have more privacy and autonomy. And so the new budget does include money for us to work with partners to purchase 2 hotels that would be used as non-congregate facilities. We also, one of our protective action facilities that Colorado Coalition for the Homeless operates is the Park Avenue Inn, and we have a contract in front of City Council right now to try to ensure that that remain a non-congregate facility after protective action closes, and that it be converted eventually to permanent supportive housing. So we're making some pretty big strides in trying to expand our non-congregate offerings. It's something that we know is really important and is a great alternative for people who, you know, for whatever reason, can't utilize our congregate shelter facility. So we would really encourage you, if that's something you're in favor of, please reach out to your city council reps and let them know that that's something you'd like to see them do more of. The non-congregate facilities are definitely a new thing for us, and we're trying to expand them as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Thank you for responding.
Is there time for one more question?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
Thanks. So I was listening when you gave the count of the total number of people on any given night, and then when you listed the number of homes that have been created and that are in the pipeline. And so it seems like on any given night, there's an existing need for about 1,100 or 1,200 more spaces. And you have a pipeline that has 1,400 spaces, but you said that over the course of the year that like any given night need is you know, it's not,
I see what
that's
you're
just a
saying.
snapshot. Like, what's the total need?
So they're kind of different things, right? We have the number of people who are experiencing homelessness on any given night and like what that looks like over the course of a year. And Lana, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but I want to say it's like 90,000 or something over the course of a year. Different unique households that have experienced an episode of homelessness. That is, we're working on that to provide temporary emergency shelter, whether it's in a congregate or an alternative shelter facility. And we do that piece of the work. But then we also know that we have the need for housing for those folks. Some of those people need supportive housing, which is the wraparound services and additional support. Some of those people can, like Lana said, be in a rapid rehousing program where really they just had a bad circumstance and they just need some extra help to get back on their feet and they're fine on their own. But we also have that 1/3 of Denver residents that we talked about who are maybe not experiencing homelessness, but just really struggling to pay their bills and to make it and not fall into homelessness, that need affordable housing. So our affordable housing team works on housing units that are available across the spectrum of different incomes. And so when we talk about affordable housing, that can be anywhere from 0 to 30% of area media income, which would be what we would expect people coming out of homelessness to be able to afford. And that can be all the way up to 100% of area media income. So we're really working to develop units at all of those different AMI levels. And I don't know off the top of my head, Amanda, what the exact need of affordable housing units is and how that matches up with the number of people we have experiencing homelessness, but it is in our 5-year strategic plan. So I'll throw that in the chat too. If you have interest in those things, our plan, it has a really great executive summary at the front end, and then you can peruse the areas of the plan that you're really interested in. And I'm, again, happy to answer questions on that if I can get back to my team if you want to reach out to me.
Thanks. Thank you. This is obviously a very complicated topic and one that we could spend quite a bit of time on, and CPUN does intend to organize more programming in this area in the coming months. And so we hope that HOST will be a part of that. I do appreciate you both coming. I'm sorry that we have to cut off the questions perhaps prematurely, but we do have to carry on with our agenda. So
thank you so much for inviting us, and we do hope you'll have us back. Please do reach out if there's anything that we can answer in the meantime.
We will. And if you don't mind sending that 5-year plan, that would be great. We'll make sure to take a look at that and to share that.
I threw it in the chat too.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
We're at our board hour now, but we do have a public comment period that I'm going to open up here. Are there any people here that want to make public comment? No? Going once? Twice? And if not, we will go right into our board meeting. Our board meetings are, of course, public, and anyone that's here and interested is welcome to stick around and listen in. All right. Why don't we start, Mark, with the next slide, if you don't mind, and do our committee updates. So for communication and outreach, I don't mind going first. We have a whole, I'm here at the MCA, and I'm looking at a whole bunch of welcome bags. Thanks, Mark. Are there addresses that you'll distribute to people that sign up, right?
Yes, I have addresses all set aside. I just needed to know who they were so I could tell people which area to be in. Because our new development homes didn't quite hit 50 in the last month or so. We needed to do some of the resales as well. So I've got some Conservatory Green, I've got some Central Park North and Central Park West. So Amanda, you don't have to go quite as far this time. So I will, divvy them up based on who's volunteering. So I know Carol said yes, and Amanda said yes, and I'm still obviously open to other volunteers.
And I didn't show up to the Cube. I was thinking I was going to be there in person, but then I had the meeting conflict, and so I'm at home tonight. When are they going to be at the Cube? Like, I'll be up there tomorrow night because of
looking at the
packet
minutes.
pickup for the cycling event. Can I just pick them up tomorrow, or will the Cube not be accessible tomorrow?
What did they say anything to you, Mark, about that? If it's a problem, I'm happy to take some extra ones for you home.
The Cube will be available tomorrow during
Okay.
the regular business hours.
Okay, great.
What are regular business hours?
Close at 4 p.m.
Okay, thanks.
And the
So I
color,
can pick some up for you if you need me to, Amanda, and bring some over.
oh,
Thank you, Mark. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll talk to you about it. Thank you.
So Amanda will do some, Carol will do some, I will do some. Do we have any other volunteers that'd be willing to drop some bags off at some doors?
So my son and I already did 15 today. So
Oh, there you're good.
Mark, so are these the bags? Are we already stuffing these with things? Is that what's going on?
no,
here?
these are the Central Park Business Association bags that have some of our old material, the last of our old material in there, and but we do also in the Cube also have our new bags. So for whoever wants to house those, or can house those, and we can. I wasn't sure if you wanted to stuff those bags or what we were going to do with the new bags.
Yeah, I think
we have new materials too for next time.
Yeah, new materials can go in the bags. I think that the other bags are meant at this point for other CPUN events that we might host. We'll keep the welcome bags to the CPUN /CPBA initiative. So I think that means that Carol, Amanda, and myself can each take, roughly 15 bags.
I can take 10 as well. This is Liz.
Oh, thanks, Liz. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I can take some as well.
Oh, this is going to go fast.
Now we have more people volunteering than we have bags available. So I will divvy them up in an appropriate way. And if you don't get any this time, I'll just count on you for next time.
Yeah, put us on the list. And what's the expectation too? Because is it to just ring the doorbell and hand them the bag, or just leave the bag?
Just leave the bag.
I just leave the bag and run. I mean, everybody's got ring. I think every house I went to today had a ring doorbell anyway, so they knew I came by. If you have a T-shirt that has CPUN on it, wear that so people, when they see it, don't think you're stealing packages or something. But beyond that, I think you're pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah. And Mark,
I mean, if you want to have a half-hour conversation, Jeff, you're more than welcome.
Well, no, we talked a little bit about that with Jeff, so I just didn't know what our expectation was at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mark does a nice job of clustering the addresses, so it really doesn't take very long.
Okay.
Well, it's a little more tricky this time because the addresses are I mean, I have 80 some that I could do, but we don't have 80 bags, so they're kind of spread throughout the neighborhood. But so, like I said, I'll dedicate however many there are in wherever you live in the area. So Carol and Jeff, I'll have to figure out who gets Central Park West. I mean, sorry, not who gets Conservatory Green, who gets Willow Park East, and who gets Wicker Park. So
yeah, no problem. That little flurry of volunteers made me think of like the end of It's a Wonderful Life or something. I'll put
from the past.
Yeah. For the committee, we'll say the big thing for the outreach committee is, of course, the survey. We'll talk about that in a dedicated section later. So Mark, unless there's anything else from outreach that you want to mention, we can move on.
No, that's good.
Okay. DEI committee.
Other than the meeting for next week that is in person, and I guess I sent out an email with the budget request, but I don't know when you would like to discuss that, or we can kind of do that over email since I sent it kind of short notice for this meeting. But that's pretty much what we've got going on, is just kind of preparing materials for the meeting next week.
Great. I'd like to vote on it tonight if we can, but let's maybe reserve that for the treasurer's report at the end, and hopefully we can sneak that in and get it solved.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. So education committee, Carol and I will provide an update on the forum that we had proposed in a separate segment. But other than that, is there anything that committee wants to talk about?
I have a list of things that I emailed Carol earlier, and I can go ahead and read through those now. Sorry, I was only half in the meeting when Carol spoke for us at the top of the meeting, which I do appreciate. Thank you, Carol. So I have some preliminary numbers from Northfield High School's enrollment. They don't do the final count until October 1st, but I ran into a mom at Flightco who said that her ninth graders showed up and there were 200 more kids than Northfield was expecting. And so I have my my projections from back when the campus opened and CPUN's assumptions versus DPS's assumptions. And so I'll update it and circulate that around and summarize again what their assumptions were initially and what we're headed for. And as Carol said, we have an unknown communication line with our DPS board representative. We've been trying since April to have some sort of standard time when we get together and talk about community needs, and it's just been this litany of well, I'm not planning it, this person's planning it, oh well, we're not forming a committee, we're hosting a public meeting, oh we're hosting that public meeting during fall break, during DPS's fall break for DPS. So again, I don't know when we're going to get that communication line open to talk about the important needs for the children in this community, but I don't feel heard by DPS currently. And so, sorry, that's a separate issue. That was number 3. Number 2, we still need, yeah.
I mean, I remember we had Boasberg speak at a meeting a few years ago, and he made the promise that there would be a seat at the high school for every Central Park resident who wanted their kids to go there, or kids
plus 35% of seats for the total capacity, such that there's room for learners from adjacent boundaries. Yes, you are correct. And I'm glad that you remember that.
Well, are they still going to honor that with the? I mean, is that still something that they remember? Or
there's a board resolution, so that has been entered into public record, and I think that that's on us to remind them that those promises were made both by the superintendent and by the elected representatives on the school board. So that is,
okay.
We are here and you are here with that voice, and we will keep saying those things. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so the second item was that we need representation from every school in the Central Park community on the education committee. So if you're in this meeting and you have a learner at a Central Park school, please consider attending the education committee meeting so that we can any feedback that we do have to give to both the superintendent when those opportunities exist and our DPS representative when those opportunities exist. I'd like for that to be informed by a range of voices. And so we are still working to ensure that we do have representation from all of the schools. Okay, and so then the third thing I already mentioned about the meeting, and we don't know about it, and you're going to talk about the other meeting. And after all of those things happen, we will keep assessing the needs and where we can go from there. So that's what I have to say. Carol, what did I miss?
You're good, Amanda.
Thanks, Amanda. Let's see, health and safety. So I'll just add for full disclosure that I've been joined here in the cube by Brad and Jamie. And I just want to introduce again a resident, Danny, who's here because he's specifically interested in getting involved in issues of health and safety. And he wanted to see what our board is all about and what we do here and learn a bit more. So welcome and thank you for joining us. Before I let that committee say their bit, I'll just say that there's going to be a section where we kind of briefly follow up on last month's presentation by DPS and some of the subsequent articles that have been published in the front porch. So just know that that's coming. Anyone from that committee want to speak?
Yes, thanks, Jeff. My apologies, I was a little bit late. I am traveling at the moment, so was not able to make the first part of the meeting. We there has been some coverage in both the front porch about the crime statistics presentation that DPD gave last month. We'll continue to reiterate that information. There has been a request from the front porch, Jeff. I don't know if we're going to get to that later on.
We'll get to that.
So
Yeah.
I will reserve my thoughts on that until we get to that later on. Some other statistics that I want folks to be aware of based on this month's crime data citywide. Denver is now the #1 city for crime per capita. We're not talking about instance, we're talking about per capita. I remember last month we talked a lot about what we mean by crime instance versus crime offenses and all those things. We are #1 in instance related to vehicle theft, and that recent data from an article from our good friends at Denverite. They are now saying that Denver is the #1 city for crime per capita. So that is data there, and I say great in as much sarcasm as I possibly can. So with that in mind, we will talk about the forum that we're going to look at later. Also, there has been a change in police leadership. The chief has retired. There's a new chief, Ron Thomas, who used to be the District 5 commander. We have a new District 5 commander, Miriam Penn. I like him a lot, actually. So I think relative, the data that we saw last month is still accurate compared to the rest of the city. Crime is actually pretty low in the Central Park neighborhood. We continue to monitor that, and then we'll talk more about some other things we're going to do a little bit later on. But from a high level perspective, crime bad in the city, crime not that bad in the neighborhood.
Safe streets.
Do you want Brad to talk about?
If Brad wants to talk, yeah.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
But the September 7th.
When do you want to speak about the gun safety forum that we all attended?
We should probably right now.
Yeah, let's do it right
let's
now.
do it.
Yeah. Before we move on to safe streets. Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. You might just have to speak up, Brad.
I'm
Yeah.
seating safe.
Yeah, of course. And Dan, you should chime in too, because I know you were there too, right? So Carol and I went to a meeting on September 7th that the Denver Police Department hosted at the Montbello Rec Center. And it was the sort of the topic was gun violence. And they certainly spent a lot of time on that. We were working to get the slides and the data from that meeting. I actually just put another request to Officer Ferenz
Okay.
to get that too.
I put in another request
Great.
to somebody
Okay.
else.
Well, okay. Well, hopefully somebody, yeah. So we'll share that data, I think, when we get it available and we can push it through our channels. But I thought the more interesting sort of observation that happened from the meeting, and this was, residents of Central Park, of Montbello, and Green Valley Ranch, was just a desire for a greater sort of community presence from DPD, and to have more ongoing conversations and get out and about. And obviously, I think the police are a little short-staffed, and so it's harder to do those things when they're responding to a lot of calls. But I did think there was some really good dialogue around. I think there's some from Central Park residents about getting the word out about community meetings, maybe hosting them in different rotating locations to increase accessibility, and just giving a chance for neighbors in different parts of District 5 to be able to engage and talk about what they're seeing out and about, and develop relationships with the officers too. So I think that was probably the main thing that Carol and I wanted to elevate. Carol, was there anything else that you noticed or thought was worth reporting out to the board?
My husband also attended, and I just liked having a different perspective when I asked him to give a little feedback, and he just felt as though there is a disparity between the community and the police department in terms of how they communicate with one another about the understanding of roles, and that needs to be, and I don't know what the solutions are for that, but that seemed, he heard that. And for whatever reason, I picked up on road rage, the increased number of incidents of road rage, and people and the police pleading with the public not to engage, because you can bet that there's going to be a gun in that car if somebody goes after you, or you somehow express your dissatisfaction with their driving, and then it escalates and there probably will be violence that follows. So that was just something that stood out to me.
Well, and I think the nuance there is they talk, a lot of these road rage incidents are happening on I-70, which of course then gets sort of picked up in the stats in our neighborhood and in District
Right.
5. But the advice still stands, right? Of don't engage. So.
Do you have something to add, Dan?
You said it before, data analytics. The police are going to apply importance to what they have the most data on. So one of the, unfortunately, what I see on social media is a lot of people voice their opinion on social media, which doesn't do a single thing to alert the police. The number of meetings I've been through, the number of conversations I've had is don't think anything is too small to text a tip, make a phone call in, or 911 if necessary, but everything doesn't have to be 911. But if you see something, say something.
Yep.
Another piece was marketing. That so many people said, I didn't know the meeting, I didn't see it. We had talked about this on the call. We thought the police should do a couple of things. Number one, market it different ways. I even heard a resident suggest flyers to the kids. 10% of those flyers make it home to mom and dad. That's cool. That's 10% more than we had. And then a lot of the education piece for those that do own firearms. Just don't be as flippant with them in your car, leaving them in your car. What would we have, 100 last year stolen?
It was stunning, the number of people apparently that leave guns in cars, and then the cars are broken into and the guns are gone. So there was an emphasis on discussing that, securing guns in your home and get them out of your cars.
Yeah, and it is the law. You have to lock up a firearm in your house if it is not actively in. I don't mean if you have it on you or you have it on your bedside, that's fine if you're there. But if you leave the house, you're actually responsible for that. And then I think the last thing that I just thought of is getting a report after those meetings from the police, so we can send that out. And because as you said, you've asked a few times, but I don't have anything to send out to the group that I'm trying to put together. Outside of what I've stolen.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what I think CPUN can play a big role in, is especially the advice they give, because they keep, it's funny, year over year, the stats are always the same. Like burglaries or theft in garages, 70% of the time, it's actually the same stat every year. 70% of the time, it's an unsecured garage. You leave the garage door open or you leave the side door open. And I think what can we do to help lower that number through education and disseminate?
Great. And there are ways you can secure your garage that are cheap.
Yeah.
And that it just makes it more difficult, so they go elsewhere.
Yeah.
I think the messages have been consistent the entire time I've been on the board. This is a problem of outreach and communication. And that's a hard net to sort of free yourself of, right?
With the challenge that the police have had and the communities have had over the last few years, as we know. That hasn't helped at all.
That's right. I think that's one of the main things that CPUN does is outreach and communications. And so we have to be mindful of ways that we can get those messages that you just laid out in a nice, clean, bulleted list out more broadly, and to have them sink in a little more deeply so that people do participate in this kind of stuff. There's no doubt that over the course of the year, this issue has gotten on more and more people's radar. It's gotten higher on the priority list. And so there's a moment here that we have to try to harness that energy and use it for good and to make it productive, right? I'm glad to hear that was communicated to DPD. They have responsibility in this too. If their goal is less crime, how we get there is got to be a shared effort. But we can do everything we can to help them out as well.
Yeah, you have a piece of it is the residents have skin in this game also.
That's right.
You can't say it's the police have to do everything. We haven't equipped them for that. So we need to be able to communicate, learn, teach.
Well, and I would also say, the officers that were there offered up, like, if you have like a block party or a gathering of neighbors, you should feel free to contact them. And especially if there's a desire amongst maybe your part of the neighborhood or whatever to have a greater relationship, or just at least start one. to reach out to them and invite them to it. And they'll, I think they're interested in doing more on, getting into the neighborhood on bikes and on foot and all those things. So I think that's another thing that can be done by people in the neighborhood as well. Yeah.
So I'm going to just move us on quickly, but only because I know we're going to come back to this in a different kind of way. And I want to make sure we get some of the other committees heard. So our safe streets, are you sort of foregoing? Okay. Sustainability. Poor Lasandhia. Mark, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for both of us.
Yes, we will miss them. They are closing on September 30th for those who don't know. So please visit your 1 or 2 or 3 more last times. So sustainability used to meet there for our happy hours for those who don't understand the inside comment. Sustainability had a good meeting. We had a few people there. We're sort of starting to pivot towards next year in terms of what we're looking at, which is going to be some of the same issues. And I don't want to go into too much detail now for interest of time. So I'll just say we're developing a better relationship with Bluff Lake in particular, and they're having some events coming up. So we're going to start publicizing those with the community, including one this Saturday. I haven't had a chance to make it onto Facebook yet to find out the details of that because that's where they're hidden.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Mark? Nope. He's muted and turned off his camera, so that means no.
Done.
All right, so can we go on to the guest speaker calendar? Just want to provide an update for you all. Next month, we have a representative from Diana DeGette's office, and then November, in response to another issue that has really peaked of late, which is some of the commercial development on Central Park Boulevard. I've arranged for Kelly Pretzer from Brookfield and Tyler Carlson from Evergreen to do a presentation for the community on commercial development in the area. We want to do something a little bit different than we might typically do. Rather than just lay out this business is going in here, this business is going in there. We want to try to organize it in more of a Q&A format that give Kelly and Tyler both opportunities to share their perspective. There's a lot of questions about, we want this, but we get that. How do we as residents communicate our desire? How are the demographics of this neighborhood weighted against the fact that we sit on an interstate exchange, and who that appeals to from a commercial development perspective? And I want to get those people to answer those kinds of questions, give residents an opportunity to hear that perspective and to ask their questions, and hopefully kind of shed a little more light on that particular subject. The lots are what they are. They are being built now. There are signs for this and that everywhere. So I don't think the expectation is that we're changing anything. It's just more a matter of understanding how these things typically come together. Are there any suggestions for that?
Jeff, this is Brian. So I guess having lived in the community since there was no development other than where I think Brookfield, Forest City previously, and Tyler have answered those questions, and I don't think that the answers have changed. I want to make sure that we're not setting an expectation to the residents that anything's changed, other than I think it is time, and it's been several years since we've had those types of communication. And I think instead of saying, let the community voice, I think we should set the expectation that, Brookfield and Evergreen are going to come in and kind of tell you what the commercial real estate market is and why we have what we have, versus people feeling like they can come in and say, we want a Whole Foods and we want a Costco and we want this, because the answer is that they've tried to go to all those guys and this is what we get.
Understood. And if that's what I communicated, that was not my intention. My intention was exactly what you described, which is this is the process. This is why it is the way that it is. It is not to give anyone the notion that they get to weigh in, or that there's.
Well, I think they can weigh in. I think we need to set an expectation when we send out the, you know, the meeting that of what the agenda is, that Brookfield and Evergreen are going to give a state of commercial real estate in the Denver, you know, Central Park area, and explain, you know, some of the logistics around that versus, you know, I mean, we've provided the surveys every year at Brookfield, and you know, it hasn't, the surveys haven't changed. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear with that.
Before we finalize our approach as being, this is how it is, and you're going to take it, can we think about what the city can do in terms of like sort of breaking into the capitalist market to incentivize like healthier food? Like, obviously that's not market driven. If everything were market driven, we'd be at like a race to the bottom for seeing how much we can charge for sodas and candy. So like, why can't we like work with our elected representatives to change the system that just lets, you know, the interstate turn into just a place to, you know, let people fuel up and move on. But like, this is a community. Why aren't there more ways that we could weigh in on like what options are serving the community?
Yeah, Jack, before you step in there, I just want to say the third invitation that has been accepted is to Councilman Herndon to speak to exactly that point.
I'll just say that you know, I see all of these developments before they begin. The land's been sold. The city cannot dictate what type of business is built on a plat. Like,
no, but they can incentivize things. They can say, all right, you can do this amount of your business in takeout, but you can't give away takeout containers that are made from this material. Like, there are ways the city can get involved. They can say like, okay, you can serve like this proportion of your food out of a deep fryer, but then you've got to offer vegetables too. Like, they don't say that, but they could. You know, there are options that we could use to make our built environment healthier. And I just want to make sure that we're thinking about innovative ways to make this a healthier place for everybody to live, specifically the people. Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi. I actually just wanted some clarification on your question, Amanda. So when you ask that question of why can't we, and I'm sorry, I'm in really bad lighting right now. Is your question, why can't we do that specifically in Central Park? Or is your question, why can't we do that across the city of Denver?
That would be citywide.
Okay, that's helpful for me to have to bring back for the conversation. So thank you.
That's and Amanda, I wish I should have had Councilman Herndon on this list as well, because he's been invited, and I've been in touch with Amanda about this for that very reason, which is so that people don't like, well, so we just sell to whoever, name your fast food chain, right? What are the levers within government or otherwise that can be pulled on the sort of stuff that people can look into?
So I guess I would have a slightly different question, which is to say, when I look at the market in the Denver area and the new restaurants that are opening and types that are opening, it's not the chains that I'm seeing in the news. It's the food halls and the Stanley Marketplace type things. And I guess the question I would respond or want to make sure that they ask or that they're answering is, why is our neighborhood at the back of the line or not on that list of places getting new food halls and whatnot? Why did Stanley Marketplace have to go outside of our neighborhood to open near our neighborhood where clearly it's been a success? And why aren't we following along some of those trends that are going on in the rest of the city? Why are we getting, I like Chili's, but, that apparently people in our neighborhood don't. Or why are we getting, different things that are the chains and not the other trends that are out there?
So I think this is all good reason to have this session, These are all really good, important perspectives. So what I'm going to do is put together a document that I'll circulate amongst the board where people can add the questions they'd like to see asked. They can add the questions they want to see asked. I'll try to organize it into a logical structure and see how we might we might best tackle that. But we do have it scheduled with all three parties for November.
I think that sounds great. For the December block, I did reach out to all the people in the city's climate action, sustainability, and resiliency office, and I have heard back from 0 of them. I'm sorry, not all of the ones in the office, but all of the ones who are in the public engagement and outreach office, and I have not heard back from them yet. So hopefully I will.
The question marks are in red because there's another topic of conversation, which is, do we have a December meeting?
Right.
I was alerted to the fact that our currently scheduled meeting is the third night of Hanukkah, and it's also during the 2-week DPS break. And so, being as close to other holidays as well as it is that a meeting that we want to just cancel and get back to it in January?
Yes. I think so, Jeff.
There you go.
Any objections to canceling the December meeting? Okay.
Wait, so are you saying that DPS breaks are not a good time to host public meetings?
I was just capturing.
Such snark.
No, I'm not. I wasn't advocating for anything. I was just capturing what was sent to me as far as concerns about that particular date.
I'm sorry, I withdraw my comment.
No, it was quite amusing.
Hey, Jeff,
Amanda,
can we
would
go
you like
back? I think, sorry.
Yeah.
Can we go back on the Brookfield Evergreen? I know I want to make sure that you understand my request that in the past, Brookfield and Evergreen have given us a status of the commercial real estate market in Denver so that residents have that information versus just asking random questions. And I think that would be a good starting point versus just having them answer the questions, because I'd rather have them, I think we still ask them, have a list of questions, but I think that we should have an expectation that they have a presentation for us.
Oh, I understand. That's understood. I think what I don't want is to spend a lot of time filibustering on stuff and using up that time not answering questions. So I want to be careful about the balance there. I understand, Brian, where you're coming from. These questions have been asked and answered, but the audience is a lot bigger than us. And I don't think that a lot of people do have a good understanding of those questions or their answers. And so, I do want to give them time to talk about what's coming and the driving factors behind that, but I want to prioritize questions. It's part of why I want to have Kelly and Tyler there together to talk about it from multiple perspectives. I
think we don't need anything other than one page that said these are the committed lots, and because the reality is that and Brookfield has probably not done as good a job as Forest City, but it would be nice for them to explain what their strategy is.
Yeah. Okay, December. Amanda, do you want to advocate for keeping the December meeting? I couldn't tell with your comment whether you were being serious or not.
I'm sorry, I'm okay not having a meeting in December. Thank you for asking.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will cancel the December meeting. Next up, some follow-ups. Mark, if you don't mind going to the next slide. I just want to provide a quick update on the school safety forum. They have, we talked last month about how we were going to have the conversation, right? Is that right? Mm-hmm. We had the conversation, and we had it with Melissa Craven, who's the Director of Support Services, and Dr. Jane Lineman, who's Student Safety Coordinator, specifically mental health and exceptional student services. You all read the proposal that we drafted. We went into that meeting with the idea of not telling them things that we know that they know, but more about what unique value we felt like CPUN could add as a partner. I would say, were very nice and very polite, and also just declined to have a partnership with us on such a forum, but did welcome our input in the way that they would welcome, I think, input from anybody. I don't think that CPUN has will have a particularly elevated role in any of their plans around a school safety forum. That forum that they do intend to have, there will just be one. It will be October 25th from 5:30 to 7:30. They had originally told us that it would be at the former Johnson and Wales campus, but it's now going to be at the Manual High School campus instead. As of last week, there was no formalization of an agenda yet, only that the things that we requested be on the agenda are things that they said that they were already thinking about. So the way that they phrased it to Carol and I, and Carol, you can add to this where you see fit, is basically they're pulling in many different partners already, and that we are welcome to help with outreach and communication, but that having a sort of seat at the table, for lack of a better way of putting it, is not going to happen. If I were to try to summarize it, would you agree with that?
Nice summary, Jeff.
Okay.
And that was reiterated in an email that we received, the last communication that we received after the meeting. It became pretty clear in the meeting, and then I don't know whether you initiated a follow-up, and it was just, this is how we're doing it. Thank you very much. We'll let you know when we have the agenda, and you can disseminate it.
So I think this just goes to Amanda's earlier point about struggling to find our footing with DPS lately, and finding finding good channels of communication and collaboration. I say lately, I think that's kind of been my experience on the CPUN board, but it seems a little more acute in the last, I don't know, year or two. But unfortunately, that is the status of it. I think our responsibility, despite our disappointment in not having more of a voice here, is to get the word out about this and to help communicate to Central Park residents that this forum is happening, and that it's available to them if they want to learn more about school safety policies, practices, procedures. Meanwhile, we have to just continue to find ways to try to improve this dynamic.
And we have no indication as to whether they're taking questions ahead of time or concerns or comments from the public. We have no idea how they're framing this, and if there will be time for people to express what they need to express and then get some kind of response.
I'll continue to ask them for the agenda, and when they have it, I'll circulate it so that we have some time to prepare any questions we might want to ask. I'm always in favor of sending them that kind of stuff in advance, too, giving them the opportunity to incorporate it. Yeah, sorry, Jack.
We'll make sure to get that information included in the email that will go out on Monday.
Great, thanks.
So go to listen to what they have to say at the forum, but then independently talk in the community about what it means to us to have safety in our community and safety in our schools. Because I mean, a lot of this does fall in our community. Like, do we live in a community that's really interested in our kids safe and making sure that we feel comfortable when we drop them off?
Yeah.
In the morning, and that really is a community responsibility. The schools bear the brunt of it, and the teachers bear the brunt of it, right? But we as a community are the ones who have to say no, and my child, right? And we're going to do it.
And that's what we tried to stress to them, was what we felt like they lack is someone that can be the ones to say, this is not their problem to answer for. They are not responsible for this. This has been thrust upon them. It's on all of us to get involved and to help. And so this was our first crack at at what you're describing. We just now need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what our next crack's going to be to help with that particular issue.
As I read in my professional journals more and more, what we talk about in terms of safety, we need to be defining that, because safety could mean to some people exclusively what happened at Northfield High School, or what happens in Texas, or wherever, where you have an active shooter in a school. But the COVID, the pandemic, has increased bullying in school. And there are a lot of marginalized students who feel acute issues around a lack of safety, just going from class to class, to sitting in class, to going to lunch, to just sort of having a normal day. So defining safety, I don't know. That's why I'm really interested in the agenda, is what are we talking about when we talk about our kids being safe?
Right. And I mean, if you're talking about increase in bullying, you're talking about students who haven't been socialized for 2 years,
And that's a
right?
huge part of the
We
problem.
as the adults have
Yes.
to say, this is your social landscape. This is how we create a welcoming environment.
Right.
This is how we don't tolerate bullying.
Right.
This is how, right? And it's each of those things is school safety, right? I mean, it is how we feel more like I need to be confident that when I drop my daughter off, she's safe with your kids and with your kids.
But there are also adults who are not feeling safe
Right.
in their work environment.
Right. It's all the community.
So
Yeah.
that's why I just want to make sure we're about what we're talking about.
And this topic, like, you engage like the PTAs for all the schools in the neighborhood. I just think they're another avenue.
Absolutely.
Right, that is probably more receptive to a conversation and talking about this, right?
Yeah. So I have to table this just to get through the rest of the agenda, but this is where we need to go next. This didn't work. That's okay. We'll support with outreach, and now we need to kind of move on to what the next thing's going to be. Similar, and a kind of a quick pivot here. I want to talk a little bit about last month's crime presentation. I was really glad that we did that. I think it was important. I think it gave some really good context. There are a couple things that I kind of reflected on. One of those reflections was sort of encouraged by Amanda, who pointed out a couple of things that I don't think I had good visibility on at the time. One is that I think that presentation was good to understand how DPD is thinking about this issue in terms of relative needs around the city, right? That's if you can only take the data that you have, that's all that they can do, right? But I think I was too quick to skip over the fact that auto thefts and auto break-ins are actually like skyrocketing. It's a massive issue, and it makes the property crimes in Central Park grow at a much higher rate than the rest of the city, even if other types of property crimes are flat or down. Those two issues specifically, we have a big problem, and we can prove it, and we can take action on that, right? And I want to thank Amanda for making sure that we didn't gloss over that in our reporting out, because I think I probably would have without her pointing that out. Amanda, oh, that's a thumbs up. I thought you were talking about, yeah, go ahead.
Was the presentation pretty similar to what the DPD did? Or is that what you're talking about?
I wasn't there. You could.
There could have been a thread.
There was. I think what we asked our CPUN meeting to do is give a little bit more context behind it. Like Jeff alluded to this, which is a lot of the data. They said like the reason our property crime is really high in Central Park is because we have.
Hey Jeff, I think I'm gonna have to ask you to summarize a bit of the conversation going on in person. It's just you can't really hear it if
I'm
you're.
sorry, guys.
I think
no,
when
it's
you
okay.
when you swivel the computer, it does pick up the volume better. Thanks.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to talk to you while talking to this guy here. No, but I think the nuance was like, we have Quebec Square,
Yes.
and we have the RTD parking lot right there, which accounts for a lot of the property crime in the area.
hotels.
The hotels, like they kind of list those out. But I think he was trying to give the context of like, where is Central Park and the districts that are in District 5 relative to the city overall?
Sure.
To show that, in general, we're lower. It doesn't mean it's not a problem, but it's lower.
Understand.
And I think, where that context was missing a little bit was in the meeting we all went to. Was it was more just kind of, again, not a criticism, but it was just kind of a recitation of stats.
Yes.
And I think the conversation we had was richer afterwards. I don't think that was necessarily there in the CPUN one. So I kind of think you need both. Like, you need that context to help explain it, because what I would love to see for Central Park is, almost not to separate them out, but like tell me what's going on in the neighborhoods versus what's going on in some like the Quebec Square retail areas. Not that that's not important, but also just to see what's truly happening in our neighborhood on our streets versus what's happening when you combine it with I-70 resident, commercial centers, that kind of stuff.
Does this group have the ability, with the DPD does not, to talk to and about the prosecution department?
I would say it's not our role. I don't think that is our role. I think that is a law enforcement role, and that is, we are not a law enforcement organization. We are a neighborhood organization. We can advocate, but I don't think we are in a position to make any types of demands on prosecution.
Okay.
What I think the second, sorry, thanks, Carl. I think the second point that I sort of reflected on after that conversation was, even if property crime isn't as bad as it is elsewhere, it's still going up, and we still have people that are concerned about it and are looking to do something about it, and that those things aren't changed by the fact that DPD has to advocate or allocate resources elsewhere. So we still have an opportunity to help people engage on this issue. And I don't want to diminish that because of relative statistics. So one thing that's come up after the, and Jack, you can speak to this, Jack. One thing that's come up after that is Front Porch is really interested in helping to organize a community forum, not unlike the school safety forum that we proposed, but specifically around safety. They want to partner with us to create a forum where DPD and elected officials can potentially come and speak to some of these issues and hear resident voices and concerns. So I don't know more than that. I think that was the extent of the invitation. I don't know the details of what an agenda would look like or who's on the guest list or anything like that, but I'm putting it out there to the board to kind of discuss a little bit, and maybe if we can quickly identify some follow-up or action items to determine whether or not this is something we would want to participate in and under what circumstances.
Has the Front Porch ever done anything like that before? I mean, it just seems a little strange that the newspaper is organizing a forum.
It struck me as a little out of their typical box as well. I'm not aware of anything like that.
So I will say that the Front Porch has not done something like this before, but a new editor just started at the Front Porch. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but as we might recall, Carol and Steve retired probably about a year now, and the foundation acquired the Front Porch. Brian Weber was serving as publisher, and they have now since hired a new managing editor. And so I think this might be reflective of, a new editor and doing things differently.
How do we find out more information on this? I mean, it seems like we should engage in some way. It's hard to commit to something when we don't totally understand what it is.
So we all the information we have so far, Jeff, is an email that I got from the editor at the Front Porch saying, hey, we'd like to partner with you on this.
Okay.
Before I responded to that email, I thought I would share it with the board.
I see. So it's coming through you, Jack. I got it. Okay.
So maybe what we do is kind of, Jack, if you could share that email with the board at large, and then we could talk a little bit about, or maybe we could establish a document where we can kind of weigh in with thoughts about what we'd want to see out of it or questions we'd need answered before we could commit. And the board can take that offline as an action item over the next couple of weeks and see if we can get some answers.
Or better yet, I will invite the editor to our Health and Safety Committee meeting next week. And we could engage with him in a bit more depth.
Okay.
Conversation is just a lot easier way to do things than email. And then we can report back in October with the status.
Well,
well, I wasn't suggesting an email, Jack. I was suggesting a shared doc where maybe we could give you help contribute to questions you ask of the editor at that call.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on any kind of immediate reaction to the idea of some kind of community forum on crime and safety? No? Okay.
Certainly on people's minds.
Yeah. And then in lighter news, Mark would like to do another Chipotle fundraiser.
Of course he would.
Mark, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, they let us do 2 a year, so I figure why not take them up on it, because it's essentially free money.
We didn't make a lot of money. I don't know how much, but we were in the black after the last one, so I don't know that this is a budget issue.
Yeah, it was like $193 or something like that. So
yeah.
It's kind of pays for, say, another event of maybe a committee wanting to have a funding for their lunch, for example, or their meeting, food for their meeting. Might be a good example of it's a similar budget item.
Yeah.
So when I went to the last one, something that I found you can do, because we can't solicit outside of Chipotle, but I asked the person in front of me and behind me to say that they were there for the fundraiser. So if you do go, I would suggest ask a couple people in line, because
if you do that, don't get caught, because they can cancel the fundraiser over that. That is not allowed.
Oh
no. All these rules. Wow, Chipotle. What do they want?
I don't think they're going to be mean about it if it's like, a couple people in line. But if we had a policy in a public meeting that was recorded and on the internet where somebody said everybody in line asked everybody else in line, that would probably not be the best idea. Please keep in mind that these meetings are recorded and that advocating for violations of the rules is not a good idea in a public recorded and broadcast meeting.
Anyone in line ever at Chipotle when going to a fundraiser.
No, so I was actually thinking I'm going to try to schedule it for one of the sometime close to when we already have an email going out too, just to not create as little extra work as possible. Though I guess our emails go out on Mondays, and I don't know if they usually let us do Mondays, particularly during football season. So if anybody has any strong feelings about what days we should do, let me know. But they let us do 2 a year. We get to keep a third as long as we spend at least $150. And I usually try to spend $100 myself just by getting a buffet, but that's always a negotiation I have to have with my wife. And again, that previous note about, this is a publicly recorded meeting, so she may see this recording later, applies to me as well. Though she's told me that she relies on me to just convey any information that come out of these meetings, and she doesn't actually watch our recordings. So, but yeah, so like if anybody has any objection, I'm certainly happy to hear them. I know there are objections in our neighborhood to chains, but technically they would be a local chain. So I don't know how to interpret that other than to say I like burritos.
Okay. No objection. So, Mark, if you're willing to organize it, then thank you for doing that.
No problem. Happy to do so.
Okay.
It'll probably be like early November is my guess.
We got 5 minutes left, and I want to vote on DEI committee's budget request. So if we could quickly get a survey update, Mark, then we can move on to the budget.
Yes. The survey launched the day of our last email. So it was, I gotta look at the calendar again. I believe it would have been the 12th of September. We have 382 responses so far. We obviously will hopefully highlight it again in our next email. We usually get a surge every time we send out an email, put on something on Facebook or put something on Nextdoor. My apologies to not getting it out into the MCA, but their email, it sounds like, will go out tomorrow with our link as well, hopefully, and that would be that should get us a good bump too. And our goal is usually to get 1,000, and I feel like we're sort of on track for getting that by the end of the month, which is what we usually hope to do. But we've never been shy about extending our deadline a little or a lot, just to make sure we get to that 1,000 response number. So that's my expectation.
Okay. I think we got the votes you needed, Mark, if I tallied them correctly, to do the Google ad spend too.
Okay, great. I will see about getting that started tomorrow then. Amanda has a question.
I think in the past, we may have pushed the survey link out on our social media platform as well. Is that something that you'd like me to ask Chris about doing this time?
Yes, please.
We have a post. I was a little late in getting it on Facebook, but we actually have a post on the CPUN Facebook page that you could actually just share if you get the okay.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
Or you
Yeah,
can repost it 12 times in the next 24 hours if you want. I don't know which approach is best on Facebook these days. So, but thank you.
I really like this survey. Thanks to everyone that helped us to test it to make sure that it wasn't going to make people angry with its length.
And thanks to Brian and the foundation for sponsoring the SurveyMonkey account and letting me have access to it so we can do surveys.
Absolutely.
Hey, Jeff, on the Google ads, I'm wondering, technically our bylaws say that we're a consensus, and if there's no objections, can we maybe change how we do it so we all don't get 12 yeses? Just say we need to have any objections sent in no later than 2 days or 3 days later. I'm just trying to expedite it. I know I'm the violator of clogging everyone's email because I forward all the emails, but I think that might be easier because I generally think most people are agreeable.
Yeah, I understand. I think I just get a little cautious because I don't like people feeling like, oh wait, I didn't get to vote, or I didn't know, or I missed it, or that kind of thing. How does the rest of the board feel about it?
I'm generally in favor of the idea of having a multi-day set expectation for something like that. But with it, for anything that's a vote over email, I would say we also should provide a rationalization of why this is not waiting until the next board meeting. In this case, we just kind of didn't get to it at the last one because we didn't end up approving the budget, and I was hoping that it would be part of the budget.
Yeah. Okay.
It can be helpful to have the round of yeses in the email just to kind of bump it up on people's radar. But I think it also helps to have the firm deadline of when, if there's a
I was just throwing it out. I have no objections to it. I just wanted to see if everybody was like, oh yeah, but I'm totally fine.
I would recommend that policy to be in a discussion item for a future meeting and move on to whatever the next topic is.
Great. Let's talk about Liz's budget request. Liz, do you want to summarize that for us really quickly and we can vote?
Yeah, so the budget request is really just for food for the in-person meeting we're having next week. It's in person because I think pretty much for the life of the committee, since it was reconstituted in the past year and a half, we've only met over Zoom, and we wanted to have some sort of in-person.
Oh, did we lose Liz? Uh-oh. I think, is she, Liz, we lost you. Can you hear us? She's still there. At the risk of
be able to attend and feel comfortable attending in order to cover pizza, salad, drinks, and cups and plates for the event.
Yeah, you broke up there, Liz, I think, but I think people understood the request.
Yeah, sorry, my internet has been spotty this whole meeting, and so I apologize.
That's okay. Does anyone have any questions for Liz before we vote?
So I have one comment. It's not a question, but is that okay?
The comment, not a question? Sure.
Yeah, it's a comment, not a question. Generally speaking, this is exactly the kind of thing that I think it would be great for us to raise money for and be able to do, and I very much support this. The one request that I would make is that everyone, at least once a year, see what you can do to help with the fundraising side, because it's going to be challenging to meet our goals year in and year out in the long run. If everyone isn't also, regularly or semi-regularly, or at least once a year, sort of asking a business or asking somebody to sponsor or finding a way to support. So, because I do think that our committee should do this sort of thing. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, no, I actually was wondering if there's a direct donation link, like a link to a page where folks can donate. I mean, I'm
Liz, it's
happy
on the
to have
it's on the web. It's on the
perfect.
website under
Okay,
donate.
I'll just create a QR code, and it's kind of like a digital pass the hat. Just say can you kick in some to help replenish the funds that paid for this. So I'm happy to do that and also see other fundraising. But I mean, I've been at lots of community meetings where you pass the hat at the end of it, and we can certainly do that also for this.
Oh, I appreciate that. That's a good idea of a way to do it. Or you can go to the Chipotle night too, when it comes up.
That too. I'll buy some Chipotle too.
Is it too late to get, does the coordination not work out to put ads for the planned Chipotle night in all of those bags that are going to be given away?
It is too late for that one because we don't have a date yet or anything. But I think we're going to try to but we might be able to do it for the next one.
I like that QR code idea, Liz. That's great.
I put the link in the chat.
Yes,
okay,
thank
so
you.
we'll do it Brian's way. Any objections to Liz's budget request?
So now we all say no.
God, you're such a
And Liz, if you want to just pass the hat at the meeting, if you give me the money, I will deposit it into the bank account, because sometimes people, I mean, and it is a charitable contribution, remember, because we are a 501c3. So either way you want to do it is fine.
Okay, we can present it both ways and just see how folks respond.
So Liz, I think you have approval. I'll leave it to you and Brian to sort out how you want to actually get the money to buy what you want to buy.
Okay, yeah, I'll follow up with you, Brian. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Liz. Good luck with the meeting.
Yep,
Brian, do you want to talk through the budget at all?
Yeah, sure. So including the money that the committee events, I kind of put 500. I just outlined what our typical expenses are. And Mark, I did put a budget in there for welcome bags and postcards, just in case we needed that again. But if you look at the next page, which we don't have to go to right now, we still have about $1,000 left from the last contribution from the foundation. It is actually the foundation, so we still have some leftover money from that too. So one of the things that Jeff asked me to do, so I guess let me just talk about this page and then we can go back and approve the budget. The intention is that we would have somewhere between $7,000 to $13,000 in reserve each year, and as you see, we have 13. The reserve is for basically, now that we have the nation builder, is to give us time, and if we don't raise the money, we have enough there, plus any of our other expenses. And you'll notice that the final tally from the fundraising committee was about $3,700, which is shy of what we need for nation builder, but it is still a substantial increase. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. I think there's some question about why that much money, what do we do with it? And I think what we're trying to do is make sure that if by chance the foundation and or MCA would ever stop any of theirs, or the businesses in Central Park would dry up and the fundraising would go, we wouldn't have to turn Nation Builder off immediately. Any questions? Mark, you can go back to the page before because that's the actual budget.
I think I also just wanted to give a little context. We didn't used to have the Nation Builder expense until maybe just a year ago, right? So this is only
2
our
years. It's
2 years. We're in our second year of having this annual $7,000 expense. And so this is kind of a new need that we have as a board that wasn't previously present. And the fundraising group is doing a good job ramping up to where they're going to need to be in the long run.
Any questions, concerns? Otherwise, Jeff, I think we should just, and I think I want to set a precedent here that if the expense is less than $100 or a recurring expense like Nation Builder insurance, that we wouldn't necessarily have to get board approval. Those are just recurring expenses that the board agrees to and will report it out on a monthly basis. It's the extra unusual expenses that we would bring to the board.
Okay. Does anyone object to the budget? Hearing none, I think we can consider that approved as well. We're a little over, but is there anything that didn't get discussed that's burning for anybody? Amanda, are you thinking about it?
I really liked the virtual pass the hat thing. And I kind of want Liz to just report back, or just like a general, like, did the donations that people offered like actually exceed the cost of the event? But it's not important, but I'm interested. Like, is this something that we should consider doing as a strategy? That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you, Liz. Okay, well, I think that was a good meeting. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Great job, Jeff.